Good morning, everyone, to Conquer the Clutter podcast, February the 15th. And it is 9 degrees outside where I live. So can spring be fall? Leslie, that's positive. This is a good thing. 9 degrees. We in Canada, we will all be very grateful for 9 degrees. Yeah, I don't want to make Canada sound like, the Great North or anything. It isn't, but it is a sign that spring cannot be far off. And it has never, believe me, after this winter, it has never been more welcomed. So today, we're going to be looking more deeply. We are not going to be talking about adverse childhood experiences forever, but we're going to be digging a little deeper so that the examples and the material that I'm hoping you invest in, if this represents your childhood or memories that you want to make more sense of, the material has to make sense to you. You've got to be able to see it and feel it and sense it. All right. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to give quite a number of examples of the way these experiences might have played out and what your residual awareness, without having a name for it, might be. All right. So we don't want to pathologize everything, but you can't fix something if you can't identify it and be aware of it. All right. You're going down the wrong path. You're wasting time and energy. Today is a gift. Let's not waste it. Let's make whatever we do today, make tomorrow better. All right. So and we're going to be talking about how adverse childhood experiences actually can have the power to shape us. And they do that by way of being a reminder. All right. Though the shaping that can be happening behind the scenes without us being aware enough about the fact that it's happening. The great news is, if it was negative, it doesn't have to be permanent. All right. You can fix, but you can't fix something if you're not aware of it. So today is about developing a deeper awareness with respect to attachment patterns. Most people who deal with hoarding don't have a strong commitment to attachment being a strong part of it. I do. All right. Attachment is our very foundation. In my mind as a therapist, it's not the whole story, but doesn't most of what becomes a welcome or unwelcome legacy start somewhere in the past? All right. And our attachment patterns, anybody who says they do not influence the sense we make of ourselves and the sense we make of what is happening to us today, if we haven't shone a bright enough light on it to understand it for what it is, in the absence of that awareness, I'm sorry, it's a legacy that keeps on giving. All right. So what makes something into an attachment pattern? So it is whatever those first experiences in the first months of life. We're not talking, and up to, in one case, up to about 18 months of age. All right. At that point, we are an absorbent little being. Now, the great thing is, regardless of what those experiences have influenced our brain to develop into, regardless of what our brain is telling us now, our brain, positive or negative, the positive stays. That's the great thing. The positive has the strongest capability to endure. Good endures. Not so good. The great thing about, and I've said this a number of times, our body, our mind, and that part of us, and I'm not talking religiously or spiritually here, I'm talking our essence, our soul, what fuels us at the deepest level, all right, is always, always, always trying to heal us. It's trying to bring the body, the mind, and our spirit together to heal us, to move us forward. Our brain is malleable. So regardless of whatever state you're in right now, all right, whatever your brain is telling you right now, do not be determined by it, but be aware of it. All right. Remember the term, and I've used this a number of times, neuroplasticity. Mentioned it in many podcasts. Just a little tiny reminder for those people who didn't make those podcasts. Neuroplasticity means that our brains, with awareness, we have to be aware to identify it, and we have to be willing to do the work that's necessary. That neuroplasticity means our brains are changeable. All right. Every single one of us can do this. We can develop ourselves into what we need to be. What's the payoff, though, for the work that's necessary? What is the payoff? Life is a complicated process. There are all kinds of things that compete for our time, our space, our energy, our mental state, what we have to offer today. All right. What's the payoff? The payoff is a future and a life that is much closer to what we want. And more importantly, regardless of how you're feeling about yourself right now, all right, what you deserve. What you deserve. All right. There are actually 4 attachment patterns. I'm going to tell you what they are, but then we're going to break them down into the 2 basics. Okay. So the first attachment pattern is what we call a secure attachment pattern. The second attachment pattern is anxious and ambivalent. So it would fall under the heading of insecure attachment. All right. The third attachment pattern is called disorganized. It too falls under the insecure attachment heading. The fourth attachment pattern is called avoidant, and it as well falls under the insecure attachment heading. Now, you have a choice here, okay? You can say, gosh, there's only one secure positive attachment pattern. I'm doomed. There's three times the possibility that I could have got screwed up enough that I'm going to have one of the insecure types. Well, that is one way to look at it. But like every other choice today, tomorrow, and the rest of tomorrows, let's reinterpret that, because there's a piece that you're not telling yourself. The secure attachment pattern gives you a foundation to build on consistently forever. It lasts, it endures. What did I just tell you about the insecure attachment pattern? 3/4 of those reactions are changeable. Your brain is ready and poised to help you change it. It is not your destiny. So we're going to make it simpler now. We're going to take those 3 insecure and we're going to compress them. All right. If you find yourself disorganized, anxious, avoidant, I don't get close to people. I know a number of people who say, I trust my dog more than I trust anybody else. All right. Now, having 2 dogs myself, I completely understand the impulse to do that. However, you're losing the possibility. You're losing the possibility of what we all are looking for, what we all seek. All right. So we're going to boil down the attachment patterns to secure attachment pattern and insecure attachment pattern. All right. So anxious, ambivalent, disorganized, insecure, avoidant, those now become one slightly bigger lump. All right. So secure, because it has the potential. All right. If you do the work that's necessary to be aware of it and hold on to it, the parts of it that exist in you, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. All right. You have one friend who has betrayed you, who is inconsistent, who is judgmental, who is harsh, who is whatever. All right. And that colors your view of the world. You're giving that experience, that person, too much influence in your life. All right. So insecure doesn't have to. It can endure if you don't do the work. Now, are you ready? Are you willing to start making the choices that keep insecure attachment in place? Is that what you're putting your effort into? Either by ignoring what the possibilities are for changing it, and then contesting those impressions when they occur and challenging them. Every one of us is capable of growing out of insecure attachment patterns. I repeated that enough. Okay, we got that one? Okay. But we have to commit ourselves to 2 things. What are they? Being aware and being prepared on a pretty consistent basis to do the work that's necessary. So in all cases, attachment patterns, whether secure or insecure, whatever that choice is you make every day, is going to play a critical role in the development of our sense of ourself, who we are as people, and how we feel about ourselves. And remember, we teach people how to treat us. So if we don't give ourselves, we're not talking about conceit, we're not talking about bragging, we're not talking about narcissism here. We're not talking about taking anything that is somebody else's right away from them. We're just talking, even in our worst moments, even when today has been a complete foul up, and we have our hand up as the person who conspired in that happening. However it happened, even on your worst day, you are still worthy of treating yourself and being treated by others with dignity and respect. All right. So we're going to be developing a little bit more of a knee-jerk reaction to assessing our part in what goes wrong and isn't productive or happy making, and then taking responsibility in a compassionate way with, okay, that was not my finest hour. We all have those people, all right? Sometimes we're responsible for making them happen, and sometimes they just kind of land in like the wind, all right? But it's our right to influence those, to make ourselves ready to handle and do the work, clean up in aisle 11. And we do that not by judging ourselves, not by letting anybody else diss us. All right. We do it with compassion and respect. I am worth more than what this decision that wasn't so great or this choice that wasn't so great has yielded. I'm worth more. I am also responsible. I'm also responsible for turning it around. So, because if we don't put ourselves on pause, if we don't give ourselves enough of an experience by giving it to ourselves first, so we know what compassion and respect looks like, feels like, sounds like. All right. I am a big believer in talking out loud to yourself so long as you're not on a bus. All right. Yeah. Because you're adding another element, another sense to the data you have. And you will hear yourself say something that causes yourself to go, really? Really, if anybody else said that, I would be calling them on it. I'm calling myself on it. All right, just don't do it on the bus. All right, so the reason it's so important to stop and nip that one in the bud is because attachment patterns, whatever you hold on to, secure or insecure, they are going to impact your brain functions in so many ways. So nip the negative in the bud at the first experience you have with it. Secure attachment, if you make the choice and do the work. All right. And I'm going to show you these books, these workbooks. We're going to go through those in a little more detail so that you can make a choice. I don't want you investing in every workbook known to man on adverse childhood experiences. I want you to choose wisely, and then we can do that work together. In fact, I'm seriously considering on alternate Fridays, making that a day where we do a workshop. It won't be a podcast, it would be a workshop, like a group on overcoming adverse childhood experiences by working through the most intuitive and user-friendly strategies that are part of these workbooks. All right, I'm not going to plagiarize anybody, but we will be using them as a guide. All right, because that's what they were intended to be. So that probably will be sometime in March, because February is entirely spoken for. All right, so remember, secure attachment strengthens us. I'm hitting the wrong button here. Secure attachment strengthens us in a lot of ways. And adverse childhood experiences have been known to lead to attachment disruptions. That's what makes them negative. They're not normal. All right. They are disruptions. They're like static in the background of our life. All right. And sometimes that static, when we pay attention to it and we feed it because we don't identify it for what it is, sometimes that takes over and it becomes a low hum. And then we just incorporate that naturally. Those beliefs, those responses, those values, all right, those behaviors, we just incorporate those into our day as normal. This is who I am. No, it's not. All right. Put it down, walk away. So the things that are not positive, all right, disrupt starting. They are generally based on experiences. They're similar, intuitive. They become intuitive. They're based on experiences that we can have had from days old to around 18 months. That's a very, very absorbent time. All right. And those disruptions, sometimes nobody meant them to happen. All right. They're nobody's fault. It was just a fact of life in the home you grew up in, particularly during those times. they can damage us as children in so many ways. So to start off, let's look at exactly what secure attachment is. All right, the science of it. Then we're going to look at the science and the indicators, I guess would be the best word, of insecure attachment. Now, I want you, get your pens and papers out, people. I want you to write down anything that rings a bell with you. If you have to go, is that me? That's probably not. If you go, whoa, yeah, that probably is. All right. Okay. So secure attachment is attachment that demonstrates itself as a normal, fundamental, right to your core desire to bond lovingly. That's not to say you're in a relationship right now, but if you have a natural bond, wish, a desire for a loving bond, doesn't necessarily mean a marriage partner. It could be friends. It could be anything, all right, with others. And if those bonds are based on what you can, even at a sensory level, feel was part of your interactions with your parents or caregivers. All right. Attachment figures, know this, can be anyone we bond with. Your parents could have not been your primary attachment figures. Maybe it was the housekeeper. Maybe it was somebody else, all right, that provided that steady, I can count on them. All right. When I'm with them, when I go to them, when I talk with them, when I interact with them, I come away feeling held and understood. Okay. Normally, they are people that we have, and the relationship is usually a consistent relationship. All right. It's not a one-off, wonderful kumbaya moment. All right. So normally they're people that we can be constantly, at least in the beginning of our life, count on being in close proximity to. Proximity and consistency are the key here. Those are the key adjectives. Okay. Usually they're parents, but they can be grandparents as well. All right. They could be siblings, or in less common circumstances, they could be others. If we were in a constant, close proximity to those others. However, most often as infants, we choose our mother, all right? Because generally our mother, not always, certainly not always, but generally in our cultures, our mothers are the people who in that first 18 months, we have a closer, persistent, consistent proximity to, okay? But they are the people, even if mother wasn't the primary attachment figure, they are the people who, when we're with them, comfort us, okay? They comfort us, they reassure us when we're unsettled and distressed. We do particularly well as a munchkin, all right, with respect to our brain functions and our emotional security development when our attachment functions happen with two secure caregiver relationships. Sometimes that's a mother and a grandmother. Sometimes it's a grandmother and a grandfather. Sometimes it's an older sibling and somebody else. All right. Okay. Secure attachment demonstrates itself. Here's how it demonstrates itself. In deep, we're talking deep, Nobody can make you feel as safe, as loved, as understood. Deep emotional bonds. And these deep, secure emotional bonds, they're forming before you can even form memories. They're forming in the very first months of our life. Now, the bonds that I'm referring to between infant and primary caregiver, all right, they are, to repeat myself, because I never do that, they are consistent, they are loving, you come away feeling safe and cared for, understood, all right? And that's because in the case of a consistent caregiver, they are demonstrating, all right? Remember, you don't understand the words. You're not thinking, oh, here she is again. I remember you. No. This is before that. This is at a sensory level when this capacity, and it happens to all of us. Nobody comes into this world that I'm aware of without forming an attachment pattern. So these consistent caregivers demonstrate in many deep ways, all right, that when we were vulnerable, are the three key words: safe, protected, and valued. Now, how does this persistent, consistent, not persistent, caregiver, how do they demonstrate this? Think of the ways that you comfort a baby in normal ways, all right? Every one of which translates itself into I matter, I'm safe, I matter. Behaviors like skin to skin. One of the reasons that when a baby is first born, they're put skin to skin with generally the mother and the father, if the father's available, all right, is because there's nothing like skin to skin contact. Okay, your primal experience with skin to skin is not sexual. It's not erotic. It's loving, it's secure, it's close, that closeness, touching, kissing, hugging. Now, do any of those behaviors translate into relationships we have with partners? You thought we came up with it as partners. No, we're repeating. We're repeating what we sought, what we looked for, what we want as children, okay? Facial expressions. Is that where flirting comes from? Is that where those silent communications we engage in with those people who are particularly close come from? Rhythm. Rhythm is also key. And one of the ways, if we don't have others in our life right now, one of the ways we can give ourselves a proximity to secure attachment with ourselves is through rhythm. Singing, dancing, movement, walking, anything that is rhythmic, all right? So, cooing. Who hasn't cooed at a baby? But especially, the key element is that in a timely way, we receive the attention from this or these caregivers that met our needs, and we were removed from distress. Smiling, laughing, playing are also later on, with your 1-year-old, your 15 months, your 18 months, your 2-year-old. Repeated contact that is sensitive to the child's needs. It isn't, you notice I've said, it isn't just repeated contact. It's repeated contact that we absorb intuitively, all right, that met our needs. And what does it do for us as a child? It reinforces that repeated contact, reinforces to the child. What does it reinforce? You didn't get this on a one-off. It's repeated and consistent and reliable. It demonstrates and reinforces within that child, you as a child, that the caregiver is reliably available and responsive. This at a sensory level, okay? It's not words. Your caregiver may be talking to you. It's not the words you're picking up. All right. It's the feeling, it's the senses, it's the contact. It demonstrates that that caregiver and then is responsive to you. And when we have enough of that, all right, we start to generalize that to others who behave in the same way and who give us the same feelings. That's why it's so important for us to know ourselves as who we really are authentically. Some people don't like people who don't know them, all right, to come and be prematurely intimate or familiar, all right? That can be cultural as well, all right? Who are you? And what makes you feel safe, secure, listened to, valued, and understood, respected, and expected of others, all right? Mostly, what all of this is about is that the child realizes at a sensory level, okay? It's not something the child says to themselves. It's in every fiber of your being. You realize you're not going to be abandoned. And this consistent caregiving doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough. It just has to make you realize, I'm okay, I'm safe, all right? This person gets me well enough. So what's created then, when it's good enough and it's consistent and reliable, is it creates a felt sense rather than an experience based on reasoning. Your brain doesn't have to interpret it to you in words, and you don't have to be able to articulate it. You just feel it. You just feel it in every fiber of your being. Secure attachment is imprinted in us as infants, and it gives us the ability to sense. That's why that intuitiveness of us, okay, this is not a court of law. We do not need to have verifiable evidence. We have that sense of ourself. We have that sense of, doesn't feel quite right. All right. That's why it's important for you to respect and maybe to talk out loud to yourself so that you can add another element to it. What was wrong with that? An example. We were at a restaurant last week, and one of the new wait staff was now it may just have been her manner, but she was particularly prematurely best friends, all right? And different people among us in the group we were with had a different reaction. My reaction was, whoa, whoa, I don't know you well enough to be making physical contact, particularly since COVID is still out there somewhere and I'm going into people's homes, all right? But no, I'd like to get to know you a little before we start hugging and calling each other sweet names. Darling, sweetie, you know, do you know my name? Like, do you know my name on my birth certificate? Even my first name? So whatever your reaction is, don't be forced into something by somebody else that makes you uncomfortable. That's where it starts. To thine own self be true. Okay? If it's not received well, that's unfortunate. To thine own self be true, because maybe you're expressing that sensed part of this is a behavior that belongs to a feeling of belonging and safety. This is not a behavior that I'm going to fake just to be pleasant. Who are you? All right. What are your reactions? And allow yourself to respect them yourself and to expect or maybe explain to others, I don't normally shake hands on a first greeting or whatever, however you're going to express, or you can just take a step back. All right. So these messages, this imprinting, it isn't even like a message, this imprinting registers itself in the right hemisphere of the brain. Does anybody know what the right side of our brain does for us? The right side of our brain is our emotional center. That's where it registers. So sometimes you can't put a word to it. Sometimes you can't explain it to yourself, but you feel it, you sense it. All right. And that part, what registers in that, the secure attachment registers there, all right, in the right part of our brain. And that tends to remain intact for the rest of our life. That's the good news. All right. Now, they're not verbal. All right. They are sensory. All right. So, because the newborn, you as a newborn, didn't understand the word. What a lovely boy. Oh, you're such a good girl. You didn't understand any of that. All right. It was like, there she is again. I love the noises. I feel better when those noises are made toward me. All right. So watch your reaction as well to non-verbal messages. This week, that's going to be your homework. Just to raise the bar on your awareness of less about what's said and more about what you sense. These internal messages are sensed, they're not reasoned. All right. And those messages, that right side of the brain, they're about I'm loved as I am. Not just I'm loved, but I'm loved as I am. I matter and I'm worthy. I'm worthy of this person consistently coming when my diaper's wet or when I'm hungry or when I need something, I need to be held. Okay. And this person, and they brought others. There are others too. All right. They value me. This gives you, as a little munchkin, I want you to picture yourself this little munchkin, maybe 3, 6, 8 months old. It gives you awareness by impressions. It forms impressions. Do you see a theme here? I want you to start paying attention to your non-verbal awareness. Because going back, now, if it If you were unfortunate and you formed an insecure attachment, you imprinted insecurely due to circumstances, I want you to figure that one out ASAP, because that is changeable. Don't waste another day feeling that way. That is changeable. Today's a gift. Tomorrow, if it comes, is another gift. Don't be wasting it on lamenting the past. Particularly if you're lamenting it about things that are a pattern in your life. Here's another one, another, unreliable person, another, oh, they won't understand me. They won't understand that I have clutter or I hoard or that gotta hide that. Well, I'm not sure it would be the first thing you talk about when you meet people and you introduce yourself, okay? However, there's a big difference in privacy and shame. All right. Shame is something, and it could be anything that leaves you with feelings of shame. All right. Anything. That is something that we seem to cover ourselves with, like body butter. All right. And it's body butters, for like lotions and things. I see somebody in butter. I haven't heard of body butter. So it's not what you want to cover yourself in. Privacy, giving yourself time and space to think, how can I move forward? How can I, to whatever extent it exists, and I continue to bump my head on it, or I continue to lose out, what might have been available if I'd done the work to develop more secure attachment patterns. All right. Remember, it's all about impressions, but it's impressions about what love is like. It kind of colors the way you see love. All right. And the important thing about that is we have a tendency to give ourselves what was given to us when we were no bigger than knee-high to a grasshopper. All right. And that seemed normal. That was what we could expect. That was what we were worthy of. No, you are more than the limitations of whoever didn't give you what you deserved and what you needed. You are more than that. And it is high time we start figuring out what you need to do to get yourself back on the track that you deserve, that you were meant to be on, albeit because somebody else wasn't available. That's their sadness. That is not your destiny. Don't make it your destiny. So how does secure attachment change the brain in positive ways? Let me tell you, it is the foundation block. And remember, you can develop it yourself, because insecure attachment does not have to be permanent. Better self-esteem, a stronger sense and respect for yourself as the self you are. Better mental and physical health. Mental health and physical health go hand in hand. By allowing space, time, space, and energy for a greater awareness of your connection, your feelings, that right side of your brain and the left side of your brain and your body. They work synergistically. One of them's out of whack, the other one can't work as well as it needs to. Here's a biggie. Have we just been through COVID? Have we just been through how many years of isolation as a result? Have we just lived a pandemic that has to fill Every one of us at some level with a feeling of fear and insecurity, even a tiny bit. Okay? And maybe loss. Greater resilience. Boy, that's something to fight for. And along with resilience, you know what goes along with resilience? Enough resilience? Confidence in yourself. Here's another biggie, because change is the only constant. A better ability to tolerate and regulate distress. Today, like every other day, will be a combination of positive and negative. And some of that negative will be distressing. All right? Burn the toast. Okay? Let that be the biggest distress today. But every day has that combination. A better ability to tolerate it, and it doesn't exact the price it has exacted. And you know how you do that? You become your own consistent caregiver. You fight for the calm. It doesn't happen just by saying it to yourself. There's work to be done. All right? If you did receive good care, consistent, reliable care as a child, good enough, all right, those experiences will support the development of a more peaceful, regulated nervous system. That is something that you can start giving yourself more of. Less dysregulation, more regulation. You can be that caregiver that soothes the child inside you. You can be that. And then you know what you'll learn how to do. And this is one of the biggest indicators of whatever is important for you that determines success: to self-soothe. When you do this work and you reclaim secure attachment and yourself as a better than just good enough, consistent caretaker and caregiver to yourself. That's why I say 3 questions, people, at any time of the day or night. What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make enough of a difference? Those are the 3 questions you ask yourself to self-soothe. Because if we can't soothe ourselves, what are we depending on? What and who are we depending on? And I guarantee you, no matter how much they care about you, they don't know you. No matter how long you lived with them, they can't know you like you should know yourself. They can't feel your feelings. They can observe your reactions, first and foremost. And it's your job to know yourself well enough to teach others how to know you. Starts with you. What will you use instead? We will be driven to find things that soothe us, because when we're distressed, anybody ever thought, I just want a cookie? And then you go to get a cookie and you think, no, I really need 3. All right, no, I really need 3. Oh, there's a 4th one left. We don't want 1 cookie. What's the use of 1 cookie? Okay, what are you using right now?
If you don't eat the whole row, you don't really want a cookie. I no longer eat the cookie, period. But
Thank you.
that's something when you're talking about self-soothing. I think, I mean, I know for sure me, I have to learn more positive methods of self-soothing. And I
Head
mean,
it off at the pass. Head it
yeah,
off at the pass.
I've lost a ton of weight. So yeah, the rows of cookies and the big bags of Hawkins cheesies are no
And they
longer
have to
in
be
my
Hawkins.
repertoire.
And they absolutely have to be Hawkins if you're going to blow it.
Well,
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
I mean,
no. I know.
really.
So let's get back to this. And then thank you very much for adding that, Shauna. That is so true. Okay, so what are you using to soothe yourself? Right now, take that pen and paper and write down what you're using. Are you keeping yourself really, really busy? When was the last time you had a moment of self-awareness, and did it come like a thunderclap, a surprise to you? It shouldn't. It should be part of every day. Not every moment of every day. Those are the narcissists. All right. So, but it should be part of every day. Today should teach you something about yourself that you weren't as aware of, or you weren't as sure was true. Sometimes those are positives, and sometimes those are areas of growth. Okay? Because here's the thing, we will find something. Will it be shopping? Will it be feeding our anxiety? Oh, I might make the wrong decision. I better not make any decision. Oh, you know, I have ADHD. That's why that happens. So, you know, just that's what happens. Well, it's an observation, but ADHD is not your destiny. It's just one of the factors you need to self-regulate. All right. And I'm going to do a recap, by the way, after this on a lot of material that is anywhere on the continuum of ADD, ADHD, because it's been a while. All right. So staying dysregulated and uncomfortable, agitated, any of this sounding familiar? Frustrated, anxious, exhausted, overwhelmed, confused, etc. All right. Any one of those things we will send us out in search of something. And the extent to which we're in a deficit because we haven't been paying attention to what we need, we're more concerned about what somebody else needs. All right, we're more concerned about the past. The more deficit we're in, the faster and more of it we're going to need. All right, because staying distressed is not an option. Now, what happens, all right, when childhood experiences can disrupt the development of a healthy child-caregiver bond? What happens? Insecure attachment is what's result. We're just going to do this part. Then I'm going to read a little bit from the index of these books so that you can choose which one works best for you. So the insecure attachment, remember, starts happening at a sensory level. There aren't words, there isn't a mental awareness. Two changes occur, all right? Two changes occur. The first is our brain becomes wired to remain on high alert. Anybody there? The second change is once a healthy sense of self is damaged, we end up preoccupied, all right, by feelings of rejection, by an inadequate self-regulation. We feel a little like we're being buffeted around by events and people in our life. And we might search for, but we don't know how to identify fast and soon enough that advance alert, all right, of what we need to comfort ourselves and reassure ourselves. And do you know what continues to happen to us as adults? The same thing that happened as munchkins, okay? We continue to secrete excessive cortisol. Do you know what cortisol does to the brain? All right. Cortisol influences the early development of the right brain. Remember the right brain? Remember that right brain we were talking about a little while ago? The distressed infant who is releasing excessive cortisol, all right, who has formed an insecure attachment. That's why it's important we change that, people. We do the work and change it. It's changeable, all right? Continues to send cortisol, excessive cortisol, as the brain's response, the hormonal system's response to the right side of the brain. That's our emotional side of our life. Anybody here depressed? Anybody here anxious? Anybody here feeling that your feelings, your emotions are easily dysregulated? You can be thrown off your game plan more easily than you want to? Maybe it's an excessive flood of cortisol because you're still processing things through that insecure attachment lens. Is that possible? Your neural system, that cortisol goes through your whole body, has a deep, deep, deep connection to your nerves, your neural system. The neural system controls how and what we sense. And that is exactly what becomes the target for us to regulate. Well, if our sense, what we sense is out of whack, we're putting a lot of ourselves into the wrong thing. Anybody here frustrated? Anybody here overwhelmed? Okay, maybe you're trying to hit the wrong target. And the changes that occur when we do that mean that we're not regulating our emotions. Have we just created a loop? Have we just come full circle back to the right side of the brain that's not doing that well? Because we're holding on to insecure attachment patterns. We don't have to. Our stress arousal. Anybody here go from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds with a stress response? You can feel it in your throat. It also affects, that disrupts us, by the way, all right? We are not playing our A game here. And the A game is there for the having, for the working. That also affects how we assess ourselves, how we rate ourselves, our sense of self. All right. And even if biologically, maybe depression, anxiety, maybe it's biological, maybe it's hereditary in your family or in your genes, who knows? All right. Can you turn around a biological thing? I'm not a doctor. You'd have to speak to somebody who has more medical knowledge than I do. But you can darn sure improve the foundation. That I know. The building blocks of how frequent, how bad, how out of control, how dysregulating it has to be. It doesn't have to be. Because if we don't do it, those adaptations in the negative attachment patterns, all right, those affect how we later react to stress in life. Anybody here a worrier? Have you habituated negative attachment pattern reactions? Have you? Because every day you need relief from that. It also can affect the way we experience ourselves. And all of this, without being aware of what those negative attachment patterns, insecure attachment pattern behaviors, attitudes, beliefs, sensations are, okay? All of those are playing in the background beneath our conscious awareness. And they don't have to. Let us get them out in the light of day. All right. Now I'm going to read a little bit. We're going to run over maybe 5-10 minutes. Okay. So on this book, Transforming the Legacy of Trauma, a workbook for survivors and therapists by Janina Fisher. Everybody got that one? Okay. This is her index. Chapter 1, The Living Legacy of Trauma. Trauma is a continuum. All right. Trauma is a continuum. Trauma is not necessarily, you don't have to qualify for it. All right. That it equates to what you see on television. No. Understanding, let's call it disrupted or disorganized, dysregulated. Okay. Understanding that she says traumatized brain, I'm going to say dysregulated brain. How the brain helps us survive and continues to try to do that. The best we let it get out of the way of your brain. Give it the right data to work from. She didn't say that, I said that. The challenge of post-traumatic coping. The challenge. Recovering from self-destructive patterns of coping. How about just unsuccessful waste of time? Waste of the gift of today. Trauma and attachment. How about dysregulation and attachment? Trauma-related fragmentation and dissociation. That's a continuum. If you got hurt on that path and you have an unconscious memory kind of sensation of it, I've got news for you. The age you are right now, anytime you have something that approximates that, you're going to take a different path. If that one's scary. All right. But it might not be the one. Let's make those decisions. Let's make those choices consciously. Not just what's the next available choice. Let's make those effective. Healing and resolution. And she does a lot of worksheets. All right. She asks questions like, how did your symptoms of trauma or dysregulation help you survive? Okay. Recognizing triggers and triggering. How our nervous system defends us. Breaking the cycle. Changing our attachment patterns. There's one worth putting some time and effort into. Signs, identifying the traumatized parts. Strengthening your, and I don't know what C stands for, your C qualities. I'm betting that has more to do with secure attachment. The 4 steps to freedom. Welcoming your younger selves. You don't have to put that to bed because it's a painful, hurting part. All right. You can bring that along with you. And now you are the constant, reliable, loving caregiver. You can heal. we can all heal, because none of us get into this life or out of it without having something happen to us. You and me and everybody else, even those people who say they had a perfect childhood. Okay. The next is a little bit thicker. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Recovery Book. Can you see that? Yeah, there we go. And that is by Glenn Schiraldi, Schiraldi. Hafsa, could you put that one in the whatever it is, chat box? Thank you. Earth to Elaine. All right, so chapter 1, part 1, okay, about adverse childhood experiences. And he talks about toxic stress, how these experiences harm the body, how they shape our psychology. Part 2, solutions, the promise of healing, self-care, regulate stress arousal. There's a good one. All right. Not ignore it, regulate it. All right. Regulate strong emotions. Don't let them drive the bus. You drive the bus. Don't ignore them. Don't suppress them. Regulate them. Take care of your brain. The next is strengthening and stabilizing the nervous system with imagery. Remember George? Is George still there? Remember George on my wallpaper of my phone? And remember that podcast where I was talking about overcoming challenges and people were saying how stuck they were, how overwhelmed, how they couldn't find the energy, they couldn't find the motivation to get up and get over the challenge of getting up, of starting, of continuing. Remember that? And remember George's face lit up miraculously on this little device that I put my phone on. And I looked over and I saw George and I thought, George, you're sort of a dream from the past. And then I thought, because at the same time in my brain, I was saying to myself, you know, these people need more than talk. These folks need an example of raw, humble, oh my gosh, there is an unexpected challenge. How do I handle it? And not the right way. This isn't a formula. This is how do you find it in yourself? Because you've watched somebody maybe trip and fall and have to get back up. I did do 3 gorilla treks, okay? And there was a lot of that involved. All right. A lot of self-talk, a lot of, remember that? That's exactly what we're talking about here. That's exactly what we're talking about here. All right. No one person is the answer. We are the answer for ourselves. We are the answer for ourselves. So, attachment imagery, self-nurturing imagery, exploring imagery, attachment imagery for, well, we're a little past this, most of us, for your teen years. Okay, those of us who remember it. All right. So far away. Comforting imagery for difficult times. Oh my gosh, there's a whole other page of this index. I'll read the headlines. Getting to the bottom of things. Float back strategies. Not go back and get immersed in the deep water that was over your head. Float back. Okay. Reworking shame. From parents, from self, from body. That was one other thing. I'm speaking to the women here in particular. One of the things, I'm a little round person, all right. And The one thing that I personally took away from Africa was that people, like anywhere else in the world, and I saw most of it back and forth with all the countries I went through, not one woman and not one man, but especially not one single woman. And they came in all shapes and sizes too. Not one single woman said anything remotely like a body image, self-judgment, or observation. Not one. There was nothing in communication, personal or written communication, or pictures, or anything that was about body image. Not one thing. No sooner had I entered the Western Hemisphere and my phone got picked up, I had about, I don't think I'm exaggerating if I say a dozen, like we're talking the moment I came into airspace where I could pick it up, about a dozen, how to intermittent fast, how to do this, how to do that, how to lose weight. I am 83 years old, and in 6 weeks, I have the body I had when I was 21. And I thought to myself, I want a quart of whatever you're on. All right, because that's not even healthy. Really? Why? Why in your 70s and 80s would you feel the need to look? And you're lying to yourself if you're saying you're feeling like you're 21. You've got knees like everybody else. All right? What? And I thought to myself, and it just continued. What does that do? What does that do to any one of us here who are women? And let's hope the men who are present are more intelligent than to expect that that would even be something to aspire for in a female partner. Can you imagine? So a lot of maybe what we shame ourselves for or what we judge ourselves for, maybe a lot of that feeds into or takes advantage of the insecurities of insecure attachment, and then puts a whole new current day twist on making you feel not good enough. Watch the messaging external to yourself that is not coming from other people or not parroting the outside messages, all right? Because they can be very damaging. And we're very susceptible to it. When you stay in the pool, all right, sooner or later, you're going to look like you're all wrinkly, all right? If you stay in the pool, it's going to have an effect on you. Just watch those messages. Let me finish with this. Forgive old wounds. Feed the soul. Weave joy into your life. Create that new future. Cultivate self-respect. Which book would you like to work from? I want you to think about that. I would like you to think about that and let me know, because we might as well be working from whatever information you're most drawn to. So the first one that I read to you was this one. And the second one I read to you was this one. And they're both available on Amazon or at your local bookshop. Okay? I'm going to go for now. You've got your homework. And next week, we'll finish a little bit of the material that we didn't, and then we will talk more about, we'll open it up a bit. We'll talk more about, we will record the podcast, however, more about what you folks want in the way of information to help us close the chapter for our podcast series on specifically working on adverse childhood experiences. And if anybody comes to next week and they have some ideas of other subjects they would like to delve into deeper, bring that with you. You take care. Make it the best week you possibly can. And I will see you next Wednesday. Take care, everybody.
Can you do it? Yes, you can.